morning. It's great to be with you all. Great to see so many friends. And thank you, Brian, for that very kind introduction. You know, I just have to say a word about Brian. Brian is brilliant. He's also so kind. Brian has been, there have been a number of times where he's just sent me an encouraging note or said something encouraging on the phone when I really needed that word of encouragement. And I just want to thank him. It means a lot. He is a true, he has that pastoral spirit. He may not be serving officially as a pastor of church anymore, but that predated his service as a pastor and continues. And I want to thank you, Brian, for that. Great to see so many friends. Thank you to all the sponsoring organizations for this terrific conference. It's been quite a week, hasn't it? For so many reasons. As you know, we were thrilled to host Pope Francis at the White House this week. And from the moment the visit was scheduled, the president called us in and said, you know, I have a charge for you with this visit. And that is that I want this visit to have lasting value. So what we did was put together some teams from the National Security Council and the Domestic Policy Council, which normally don't play in the same sandbox, and looked at issues like climate change, poverty, marginalization of people in various ways, refugee issues, issues related to the Sustainable Development Goals and eradicating extreme poverty around the world, promoting religious freedom around the world, and other issues like that, where the president and Pope Francis share values and commitments. And we worked together for months to develop ideas to broaden the agenda and to fill out the agenda for the visit that the President and Pope Francis had. And we got to go over to the Vatican this summer and begin some conversations with people at the Vatican, which was a real joy and pleasure, and then continue those conversations. And in fact, those conversations have continued after the visit and go on. On Wednesday, we released a fact sheet that I'll make sure all of you have if you don't already, that outlines some of the initiatives that our administration is taking that flow from the values that the President and Pope Francis share. And some of those initiatives include some new partnerships aimed at addressing climate change. And we hope that some of those partnerships will be things that you all will want to join in. We're just getting them started, and we welcome you all to take a look and tell us what we should do next in that area. We hope that that will lead to lasting change and the kind of charge that the President gave us being fulfilled. So I say that to you mostly just to say that I see this gathering as a parallel to our efforts. It is aimed at creating lasting change. It is saying this visit of Pope Francis that has helpfully lifted up so many issues that we care about, it should be more than a visit. It should be something where it galvanizes us to go across our communities and across the world and to create lasting change on behalf of the people we care so much about. So thank you. Thank you for treating the visit in that fashion. Thank you for organizing this strategic discussion today. Thank you for the opportunity that we will have to work with you to continue to make lasting change. That's very important to the President, and I know it's important to you. As you all in this room have made so clear, I feel like I'm definitely preaching to the choir here. You've made this a moral issue. I was just standing in the back and came in and heard you all speaking from the heart about how this affects people and why this matters. And it's been your voice that has really pierced the noise in our culture. And it's been your voice that has led to more and more people every day coming to the view that this issue must be dealt with now if we take seriously our moral obligation to our children and grandchildren. So thank you for that as well. I know the President shares your view. The President has said that there's no challenge that poses a greater threat to future generations than climate change. And you know better than anybody the impacts of climate change, rising sea levels, intense droughts, catastrophic storms, but also the profound effects that we're seeing that climate change has on the health of our children. In the past 3 decades, the percentage of Americans with asthma has more than doubled, and climate change is putting these individuals and many other vulnerable populations at greater risk of landing in the hospital. And we're talking about children, the elderly, the sick, the poor, some communities of color. Rising temperatures can lead to smog, longer allergy seasons, and increased incidence of extreme weather-related disasters and injuries. We know that this is intolerable. It cannot continue. It cannot be ignored. It must be addressed. That's one of the reasons why Pope Francis, as you know, wrote so eloquently about this in his encyclical. He calls for all of us to care for our common home. And I'll quote him saying, "The urgent challenge to protect our common home includes a concern to bring the whole human family together, to seek a sustainable and integral development, for we know that things can change. I urgently appeal, then, for a new dialogue about how we are shaping the future of the planet." And I think you all were able to watch his very eloquent remarks this morning at the UN General Assembly. I know we were all pleased and moved to see that. President Obama, as you know, is committed to meeting this challenge as well, and he's doing so in a lot of different ways, especially looking at how this impacts our poor and vulnerable populations. The President believes we have a moral obligation to leave future generations a planet that's not polluted or damaged. And the President recently said, on this issue of all issues, there is such a thing as being too late. That's the hard reality that we face, and that has to motivate us to move. The President continued, "The moment is almost upon us of being too late. That's why we have to convey to our people tomorrow and the next day and the day after that." The President is deeply committed to this issue, as I'm sure all of you can tell. During his first year in office, he made a pledge that by 2020, America would reduce its greenhouse gas emissions if all other major economies agreed to limit their emissions as well. And to reinforce this commitment, the President launched the Climate Action Plan in June 2013, which, as you know, consists of 3 pillars: cutting carbon pollution in America, preparing the United States for the impacts of climate change, and leading international efforts to combat climate change and mitigate its effects. And so we're putting that agenda into effect in lots of ways by implementing America's Clean Power Plan, which establishes the first ever national standards to limit carbon pollution from power plants, which, as you know, is the single biggest source of carbon emissions in the United States, and to increase access to clean energy for all Americans. As you know, however, we can't meet this challenge alone, and that's why your movement is not just based in the United States, but it's global in nature. It's a global problem, and it will take all of us working together across the world to solve it. And that's why we're working with other nations to advance cleaner energy technologies, enhance energy efficiency, and promote best practices to reduce global greenhouse gas emissions and aid developing countries in increasing their own resilience to climate change. We've been working side by side with other nations to design important new institutions to combat climate change globally, such as the Green Climate Fund, to which the U.S. has pledged $3 billion. And I just left, when I was leaving the White House, we were concluding the arrival ceremony, 2 arrival ceremonies in 1 week. That'll make a White House staff pretty tired, by the way. On the occasion of President Xi's state visit to Washington. As you know, the U.S. and China are marking new milestones in the fight against climate change and building global momentum in advance of the very important Paris climate talks that will happen later this year. So we will work with leaders throughout the world to achieve a durable and ambitious agreement at this year's conference in Paris, and I know your voices will be essential in whether that is achieved or not achieved. So we are grateful for your work on that as well. Let me just close by talking about a story that the President told that you may be familiar with as well. He was telling the story on Christmas Eve in 1968. The astronauts of Apollo 8 did a live broadcast from the lunar orbit. So you had Frank Borman, Jim Lovell, William Anders, the first humans to orbit the moon, describing what they saw and simultaneously reading from the book of Genesis. And later that night, they took that photo that we all know, the image of the Earth, beautiful, breathtaking, this marble of blue oceans and green forests and brown mountains, brushed with white clouds and rising over the surface of the moon. And while the sight of the planet might seem routine today, imagine what it was like, and some of you remember what it was like to see that from our home for the first time. And even the astronauts, the President recalled, were amazed. And he quoted Lovell as saying, "It makes you realize just what we have back here on Earth. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, and God saw everything that he had made, and behold, it was very good." Thank you for your commitment to ensuring that the goodness of the earth is safeguarded for the next generation. Thank you.